Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we have a new game to show off. This is Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, a much anticipated title, and I'll be honest, I had no idea what this game was until I saw the announcement, and it was really curious. You see, if you like games like, for example, obviously Total War, this is probably a big reason why you watch this channel, and stuff like Crusader Kings, it's kind of like this was the offspring of the two, and it's really interesting. A big thank you to the devs for supplying a key, and we're going to be checking it out. We're going to be doing a bit of a first impressions type of thing, and I feel like this might be a type of game that I might cover fairly often, as it is really curious. So right off the bat, this is how you start off your campaigns, and it looks very much like a Crusader Kings style game. You get a few different start positions in the starting period. You can choose to be either a kingdom or a province, so you can actually take control of a province and be a servant to someone else, which I think is pretty interesting. It's got a lot of different things, a little different toggles there, of if you want stuff to stay historical in a certain sense, or if you want more gold, how you want the AI to play. It's a decent amount of stuff. I've been playing around already. I've clocked around 9 hours into this game, and there's a lot of functionality. You can see that the map itself is freaking huge. We'll have a little bit better view later, but it's mostly Europe, a little bit of Eastern Europe, and a little bit of Africa too, in the Middle East. Like, you're going to be able to have a lot of campaigns here. I've mostly been playing as a few different Arabic type of nations, and I did a little bit of a playthrough as some of the Irish too. It's good. It's a good game, but we're going to jump right in. We're going to talk about this properly and just go from there, as you'll see what I mean about the whole very similar to Total War, but also similar to Crusader Kings. As far as I'm aware, every time you start a campaign, you will get the whole learning how to play thing, and there's a lot. Really, like, this is just a first impressions video. There's going to be guides, because I feel like guides are going to be needed. But yeah, you can already see, like, stylized art is actually kind of cool. Everything's pretty. You've got a lot of different things like books, faith, cash, population, food control. There is a lot to go through here, and it's kind of cool. A little bit overwhelming at the start if you're not really used to these types of games. But again, if you've played stuff like Crusader Kings or if you've played stuff like Total War, you should be fine. It's just a little bit out there. It's a bit of a mix. So you control a decent amount of territory when you start, right? This is basically just a little bit of Sardinia, and I've just got one city and then loads of different villages. The main thing is my city. I build from the city, I sort out stuff there. It's really interesting how this works, because all the minor settlements are part of your territory, but you don't really have too much direct control over them. It's just how you build is how it kind of gets better, how you get more benefits from it. I'm liking the system. I'm very much liking the system. We'll go into building a little bit later. It's just the case of, it might seem weird, especially since you have to, like, recruit generals, and the generals are at the top there where your, like, leader is. That's not only where you get your generals, but that's where you get your diplomats too. There's all these different things like merchant opinion, clergy opinion. Like, it's definitely on levels of, like, for example, Hoi 4, where you have to really think. There's a lot of different details. Don't let that put you off though, as, well, you know, these types of games, it's a grand strategy game. They're supposed to be a bit out there, and I think that's a really good thing, because with the 9 hours that I played, I didn't feel hopelessly confused. I've spoken to a few other creators who have also been playing this, and they say that it's pretty much just like the original Knights of Honor, so if you know the original game, you shouldn't really have a problem here too. So with just basic playing around, I found that armies are constructed by the means of getting a character up there. They'll have a certain amount of troops. You'll have them in your city, which then you'll be able to then recruit more units, depending if you can or not, because you'll need prerequisites, and those then you just drag and drop. It's that simple. I think that's kind of cool. It's basically allowing you to tailor your armies the way that you want it. Early on, you're going to have nothing, essentially, but peasants, and you're not really going to do well, so it depends. Then when it comes to construction, it's very much like Total War, right? It's very much like Total War. You pick a building and you go from there, you upgrade it. There's loads of different upgrades for these buildings, which can get better benefits. And you can only have a certain amount of slots. I believe the max is 8 per area that you own, with 4 being unlocked and the others costing cash to actually open up, which can get kind of expensive. Not only that, but if you want to recruit armies, you have to use a population mechanic. So you actually need people, you need food. I really like this. Like, I've only been playing a little bit of time, but I'm honestly really into this. And I'm going to be comparing this a lot to Total War, I do understand, but this is what I'm kind of used to. So it's kind of old school Total War vibe there, where your character is your leader, right? This could be your king or whatever you end up being. You're married, you actually have to have children, you can use that to marry off your kids for treaties and stuff, and yeah, it's kind of cool. You will age, you will age. You don't have to if you don't want to, you can actually turn that off, but I kind of like the idea of your character aging, all your good stats being lost, and depending on how you've built up your other characters, because there is like a skills tree, you really need to focus on what you want your characters to be able to do. When they're born and as they age, things need to change around, you need to pick, you need to decide. All that type of stuff is great for a grand strategy game. For something quite large, you expect the details, don't you? And these are very much clearly the details. There are so many different pages to this game, like here where you start seeing all the different countries, all the different provinces. Diplomacy might look a little bit easy to manage, but when you take into account everything, because all these little buttons, they all do something. We're going to have a little bit more guides to this as this game comes out, I believe, tomorrow for you guys, and I feel like guides are going to be quite helpful. I mean, don't worry, basic diplomacy is basic diplomacy, and it's just the usual stuff like you remember from like Rome Total War and stuff, but yeah, I think it's something that really is quite different when you think about it, yet still very familiar, which I think that's a very strong point here for this type of game. Now, when we start moving on to other stuff, like say for example battles, this is where it gets really interesting because it plays in two ways. You can either have it in a Crusader Kings format, or you can have it as a Total War format. Here you can start seeing some armies moving around. The green is mine, the red is the enemy, and yeah, I'm gonna lose this fight, but this is just purely for showcases. You just sort out everything, you just put your armies in the area that you want. Obviously follow the AI around, you get battle preparations, and then you can choose to either all in, which is honestly just Crusader King style, auto-resolving and stuff, which stays there too, because that means that the battles actually stay fluent, or you can decide to just lead the charge yourself, where then you'll start getting the actual combat. And this is where it gets like more Total War-ish, more old school Total War, which I think is really cool. The graphics for the battle aren't really great, if I can be very honest, but it doesn't matter when it comes to graphics as long as the gameplay is good, and the gameplay is actually fairly good. This is the usual stuff that you can expect from these types of strategy games. You know, your cavalry are going to be good for charges, you're going to want to be able to flank your enemy, you're going to want to support with some archers and stuff, and I think that's a really strong point here. As you start going later into your campaign, you'll start getting better troops, and obviously if you start dividing your cash up well, money is really important in this game. I know it's very important in grand strategy in general, but believe me, cash for this game is so important. If you start lagging behind, you're going to start to suffer. So I found diplomacy to be very useful here, especially when you are attacking different factions. Here, I decided to invade Spain. It's just not what I would normally do in this type of campaign. However, I just wanted to see how the AI, my ally, would react, and they did come to my aid. Granted, they started this war, but I'm the one laying siege, and when this battle is over, since I'm the one who laid siege first, I'm the one who's going to keep the city, which gives me a foothold into Spain. Murcia is obviously coastal. I can then go to Mallorca or go up north to Barcelona. It very much depends what I want to do, but obviously being in Sardinia means that I'm going to be surrounded by a lot of potential enemies, so I want to be close to my allies if I want to actually survive here, and still want to kind of build up in Sardinia to be able to be a little bit okay with cash. I really did like the system. It allows you to be able to move around a lot. The game also moves in real time. It's not turns like Total War, so you can go normal, double speed, quadruple speed, or even times 10. But it does kind of make the game lag a little bit, at least that's how I found it. Even though it says I've been playing for 22 minutes, it doesn't necessarily mean I've been actually active for 22 minutes, it's just going a little bit faster, as these buildings do take a while to turn up and so on. It's not, again, on turn basis, so it just depends on how much of a workforce you have. Combat itself is quite varied. You're not only just fighting on fields, you're fighting sieges and stuff, like for example in this map where I'm showing off a siege where I'm attacking, and I must say, it's pretty interesting because I've got the ally fighting with me. As far as I can see, there's only two armies that can fight together at the same time. So my allies and myself, if I decided to bring another army in, they wouldn't actually get into the fight, which I find a bit weird. because why wouldn't you want to try outnumber your enemies as much as possible? But it's still pretty cool. The cities are themselves quite large, and like you can see that they're fairly large as it stands, with loads of dips and turns. Pathfinding, I will be honest, can be a bit strange here. It depends on how the AI or your own units react. I've noticed that a lot, but it's nothing that I would say, yeah, I'm not going to play this, because, yeah, you just have to keep an eye on your troops, really, more than anything else. And by the way, this is not actually a siege battle, but rather the enemy have decided to sally out. They've decided to actually come out and fight me, and when they sally out, they are sallying out directly from their fortress, their citadel. I love that. I honestly really, really like that. It shows that you can still try and fight into the town, because the way that this goes is either you completely destroy the enemy or you take over the capture points. And it was kind of interesting to be able to see them coming, but me being able to like maybe sneak around and try and take some capture points when they were sallying out fully with their forces. Yeah, I really, really like this. Honestly, it's a great game design. It's great game design. When you take over a settlement, it's not just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Instead, you actually have to establish order. It's not an easy process. Even rebellions can start, which I find really, really cool. There'll be some clips of that later on. But I really like this because, yeah, it makes sense. You're an invader. Why would the peasants easily accept you after you've taken over the city? Just little things like this make a game a lot better. Perhaps one of the most interesting things, however, was the fact that I was in this defensive siege, right? I was being attacked. There was a bit of a problem with England and Scotland deciding to attack Ireland, right? And Dublin was on the siege. Yep, sounds all normal. One army was attacking me, but a second army came to reinforce. And that was weird, because yes, there was an army on the way, but it wasn't close enough to be able to reinforce, which leads me to believe that maybe things are still progressing whilst you're still fighting, because they were a decent distance away, that's what I mean. And if that's the case, if it's just constantly happening even when you're fighting, that could lead to very interesting campaigns. You'd have to be a little bit more careful once you're getting into fights and stuff, because you wouldn't be able to look at the campaign map once you're busy fighting with everyone else. And I thought that was a really good system. Now, I did get absolutely demolished here because I had two factions which were very, very strong. But all in all, yeah, it was really cool. You see the enemies bringing up ladders, and yeah, it's butt ladders, just like Total War. But I kind of like it. They're trying to take over the walls. They were trying to surround. The AI kind of got a little bit weird, but I think they were trying to meet up with the main force to be able to come in, and they did eventually. But yeah, defending is easy if you know how to spread your units around, if you're protecting yourself. The towers will also do some damage, but they can be taken over, so you need to keep those active. You need some defensives. Yeah, it's proper siege warfare. It's proper siege warfare. Hell, whilst you're waiting for the siege, you've actually got like siege weapons doing some damage outside, and you're starving out your enemy. It takes a while. It's not like you have to wait like 2 minutes and it's done, but it will actually take a while, which means that enemies could reinforce. They could call in allies, because the AI will call in allies. The AI will start packs against you. Now, like I said, the game can be a little bit complicated, but as you start getting the hang of it, it's pretty much just going with the motions. So here, I decided, if I was going to play as Dublin, I decided to ally up with the Scots. The Scots then got into a massive war with the English. This was a really, really complicated fight. This led me to betraying the Scots and becoming a vassal to the English in an effort to keep my hide safe. And then I realized this might be the perfect time for me, because that gave me the opportunity to unite Ireland, and then I could claim my independence, because that's the thing. If you decide to vassal with someone, then you can betray with them later. And I really liked that. I actually thought that was pretty interesting, as the vassal system allows you to still work in a rather independent way. I've not really noticed it being too forceful, barring the fact that he kept asking me to get into war with Scotland, but then Scotland started being destroyed, so yeah, I thought that was a good way, because if you start deciding to, say, for example, loot the small villages, that's a really good way to make some cash, and then just try and expand from there, because the end goal is very much like Total War or like Crusader Kings. You want to have a big area, you know, you want to proclaim yourself to be a supreme ruler in a sense, but it does take some time, and this is a few hours in. I was just casually playing. I'm still very much going through the motion, learning stuff. Every time I think that I've got something held down, there's a bit more that I'm learning, And I kind of like this about these types of games. I think that this is a really good thing. Honestly, if I have to say it, it's definitely one of those games that if you're missing historical Total War, if you're really missing that, and I kind of am too, I guess I do focus very heavily on Warhammer, but even I do miss medieval and stuff, right? I still go back to them. This is definitely something that you might be interested in. As far as I'm aware, every faction that is on the map is playable. I've not really had the time to check them all, but anything that I cycled over was playable. And I think that's a really, really cool thing, because that means that you're definitely, well, able to just have some replayability. You've got different areas, you've got different cultures, you've got different units depending on who you play. But so far, I've only really played as Sardinia. I played a little bit of the Moors in Spain, because obviously in the south in Granada is where my homeland is, in Gibraltar. So I was like, oh yeah, you know, I could do a little roleplay campaign here. And then I played a little bit with the Irish because I wanted to see a faction in the early start date where you would be basically vying for control there. It's kind of hectic, I must say, because I had a few playthroughs, and yeah, Scotland comes to attack, England comes to attack. You can even see as the map is just changing, there is a lot to go through here, because there's just so much going on. Factions are getting destroyed constantly, you'll be alerted of that. You'll also have rebellions to deal with in yourself, unless you can actually knock down those areas, which I did have a few rebellions too. I managed to capture Cork, I then lost Cork. And it was back and forth until I actually managed to properly solidify myself down there. Hell, later on I was just pretty much just trying to take over the little bit of Scotland that was left, and then preparing myself to actually just betray England and sort out an army there. But it feels like there is so much to this game, and I actually really like this. As a first impressions, I was quite surprised. I didn't know what I was coming into, in all honesty. But the moment I started seeing the battles and how everything was run, yeah, this is definitely something that I'm going to be covering more on the channel. I really hope that you guys enjoy this, because it's definitely something that I feel could be kind of cool. I don't know if this game will have mod support. Right now the Steam page doesn't really say anything. It would be kind of cool if it did though, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. Would you like to see some guides, like for example, diplomacy, how to get some cash quickly, because I've actually managed to figure out how to get a decent amount of cash with a province, rather than just starting with a kingdom. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion, and I'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.